Does Jewish supremacy have any basis? And some quote the story with Amalek, where the Jews were commanded by God to eliminate Amalek, men, women, and children. How is that different, lahavdil of havdalas, to the Aryan supremacy? And other things are quoted. And it's been the basis of a lot of anti-Semitism, not just now, but over the years and over the centuries and generations. So let me address it at least briefly, because it's a topic that a lot of people are talking about, recent online different debates and discussions on the matter. And as always, matters like this are usually misunderstood due to ignorance, not really understanding the texts and the context of the texts. And sometimes to understand context, you have to go back to the beginning. You can't just read a verse. You open up a Torah and you read Parshat Kisova, you'll read a curse. You say, oh wow, look at this Torah, look how horrible it is. But that verse comes after many verses before it and many afterwards. You have to start from Bereshis, Bara Elokim Hashemayim v'Saaretz. You can't read a text out of context. Many of these questions, if not all of them, come from that out of context. So how do we answer this question? Does Jewish supremacy have any basis? So let me just say a few words about that and then go to a few other questions more specifically. The answer is absolutely and unequivocally no. Because the whole basis of Judaism is that God created the world. God created the human being. So the concept of supremacy is a man-made distortion and a man-made corruption of power. Every aspect of God's creation, God creates and therefore is sacred. Every grain of soil, every fiber of existence, and definitely every human being, as the Bible, the Torah tells us, every human being was created in divine image. We are all children of the original ancestors of the human race, Adam and Eve, created b'tselem Elokim, the divine image. Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chayim, and God imbued the human with a soul, the divine soul. We also have another side, an animal soul, another part to us. The temptations, like Ruach HaBehemi Yeredes Lamata, we have the animal part within us, that's selfish. You could say the earthy part of the Adam, Yikach, Offer min Hadam, the Offer, the Adam of Adam, the earthy part. But we also have Ruach HaAdam El Lamayla, the spirit of man that rises, which is the transcendent part. And there's a battle between the two. Every human being, Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem, the Mishnah says. How special is the person, how beloved is the person who's created in the divine image. Then afterwards he talks about the quality of Jews and the quality of Jews who received the Torah. The idea of supremacy doesn't exist not within Judaism and not with outside of it. What do I mean by that? There's a Kohen Levi Yisrael. The Kohen can serve in the Beis HaMikdash. A Levi serves to some extent there. A Yisrael is not allowed to walk into the Beis HaMikdash, to big parts of it. The Holy of Holies is only the high priest. So is that because he's supreme, because he's superior? Everyone has their role. And in that role, it's like a human body. Which part of the body is superior to the other? There are organs that are more vital than others, but they all need each other to be complete. The same thing in nature. And the same thing with the Jewish people and the non-Jewish people in this world. God created them all. So then you'll ask the question, so what does it mean, the chosen people? It's a good question. And God did not choose the other people. So we'll talk about that shortly, what that means. It's also misunderstood. So really, it comes down to understanding this fundamental principle. Once you know this principle, it changes the whole picture. Because then you start saying, one second, so what about this verse that seems to suggest that someone is lesser or more? But it has to be in context. What do you mean lesser or more in the eyes of God? So how do we respond to arguments claiming that Jews are racist? And I'll also answer the question, how do we respond to discussion about people saying the chosen people? What does that mean? So first of all, as far as Jews being racist, so let me say this. Depends who you're talking to. How do you respond? If you're talking to a rabid anti-Semite, to somebody who you can't change their mind, they're already convinced, I don't know if you respond to them, because you're not going to get anywhere. They're already brainwashed and they're already convinced, so you have to either avoid them, or if you feel there's an opening, you can talk, but in many cases you may not find that opening. If you're talking to someone that is open-minded, and you start speaking, you begin with this, that God created every human being in the divine image. Very clear. That's not even a question. The question now is, do we live up to that divine image? And that's where you have choices. So the concept of the Jew wasn't even created by the creation. Adam and Eve, it doesn't say they were Jewish. The Jewish people, as a halachically, legally, the Jewish people became a people by 26 generations later, in the year 2448 from creation. It's a long time later. Almost 2,500 years later at Sinai. And that's why they converted then. A literal conversion. They had to convert because they were not technically Jews before. They were created in the divine image. And then God said, here you have two choices. Either you're going to live up to your divine image, la'avda l'shamra, as the Bible says, and you're going to serve and protect and bring and reveal into the world the divine sacred nature of existence, and fulfilling its purpose to transform the material world into a divine home, or God forbid, you'll wander as Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, and then other sins, and people became more selfish and more self-oriented. Instead of God-centric, self-centric, egocentric. Until 20 generations from Adam came a man called Abraham. I'm not going to go through all the details. There was Noah, of course. Abraham reversed the process. He grew up in a pagan home, in a pagan society. And what did he do? He chose. He began to search. He realized the pagan attitude to worship yourself, to worship ego, power, there's something more to life. And he came to discover on his own God. And he embraced the path of goodness and kindness as opposed to self-preservation or self-interest. He chose that path and God responded. That's why he's often called the first Jew. But what means a Jew, technically? It's an archetype. It's an approach to life. It's the approach of life of making God the center of your life, not yourself. And thus, your commitment is, laseh tzedakah and mishpat, to do justice and charity and virtue and kindness. And all the values we cherish today, Abraham pioneered. And then he passed it on to his children and to his family, and they passed it on. And as such, the covenant between God and the human race began. Abraham taught everybody. Everybody in the world was, then there was no such thing as Jew or non-Jew. So he spread this word to everyone who was ready to listen. It is his children and grandchildren that became the Jewish people because they embraced it. Others were not ready to embrace it. We're told that when other children of Abraham, namely Ishmael and grandson Esau, were approached by God, would you receive my Torah, my mandate, to transform this world into a divine home? They were not ready. And they said no. But in the years later, they would become ready. You have the birth of Christianity and later the birth of Islam. Maimonides writes that these are all helped pave the way toward divine unity, toward Mashiach. The point is, it was always a message for the entire world, because the entire world was created, every human being, every one of the 8 billion people on this planet, in the divine image. But it was Abraham and his children, Abraham and Sarah and their children, that embraced it. So the Jewish people became the people of the book. So chosen, they chose themselves, they chose to rise to the occasion. So God said, I have a partner. I finally found in the human race a partner, with the goal that they would teach it to everyone, not just to their children, to the entire world. And that's why Maimonides writes at the end of chapter 8, in his Laws of Malachim, the Laws of Kings, he writes, that's why it's an obligation to inspire every human being on earth to accept the 7 Noahide universal laws of civilization. They're not just 7 little laws. They're the laws, the foundations of civilization. They're basically the 10 Commandments without the honoring parents or without Shabbos, which is another discussion. And it's meant that everyone would embrace it. And in the future, and you see in all the prophecies, and as Maimonides concludes his book, in the future, the world will be no longer evil and destruction, because the whole world will be filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. The whole world. The business of all the world will be not material success, but materialism as a means to spiritual growth. That's the perspective of Judaism. And that's why Judaism always perpetuated and fought vigilantly, even when we were facing enemies like Abraham did with the pagans of his world, that we knew that we believed that all the people in the world would ultimately embrace this path. That's racism, that's supremacy, that's the exact opposite. It's a belief in the human race, it's a belief in every human being. Obviously, not everybody rose to the occasion. Some people went the opposite. and they attacked the Jews. Interestingly, the Medrash says that if the non-Jewish world would know the many blessings that they received from the temple, the Holy Temple, from Jerusalem, from Israel, from the Jewish people, they would surround them and protect them from their enemies. But instead, many of them became enemies. Whether it was the Christian crusaders or the others that persecuted Jews or expelled them, or genocides, all the way down to the Holocaust. Little, not even appreciating, understanding that these people that you're massacring are the ones that are teaching you how to be the best you can be. This includes even Hamas and even the greatest enemies. But we can't be naive. When people choose the other path, the pagan path, a path that is antithetical to godliness, that's the issue. When you're fighting that, you're not fighting, it's not a racist fight, you're fighting immorality, you're fighting evil. You're fighting people that are choosing to defy and battle the divine image in which each human being was created. That's how you respond to this whole topic. Now, the fact that many Jews or non-Jews don't know this, that's why we need to educate. And that's why we need to inform. So what is the Jewish view of non-Jews based on this? Exactly what I just said. So when you'll find a statement somewhere in the Torah that says, eliminate the pagan, or eliminate the Amalek, or eliminate, you're talking about eliminating that archetype of Goyishkeit. You're not talking about, sometimes it means the people who have embraced it. The Nazis became so corrupt, there was no choice but to destroy them. But everybody has a divine image that you want to access. But it's like anything. Anybody could become a criminal. A Jew could also be a criminal, and then you have to deal with that criminal side to them, even if they have a divine image, but it becomes concealed. So the war is against the divine, not against any human being per se. Now, but if the human being comes and attacks you, obviously you have to do what you have to do. This is a critical piece in the whole picture of how Judaism looks at the world. Now, time is limited. I wanted to cover more ground, but there was more about the war in Israel, some follow-up. Okay, we'll stop here, simply again, due to limited time. And we shall conclude by saying everyone should have a ksiva v'chsima teva, a blessed year, in all ways, abundance, children, health, livelihood. And all with a simcha, there should be complete peace in Eretz Yisrael, the freeing of the hostages, uninjured, unscathed, and the end to all of this, and yes, that every human being lives up to their divine image. So together we can all march to the Gula, Mitzvah Vashlema, personal and global redemption, where that divine image will shine in all its diversity and all its synergy and unity. A freilichen and meaningful Chedesh El. This has been My Life Chassidus Applied. We're here every Sunday, 8 to 9 p.m. Good gebencht Yor.
This program is brought to you by My Life Chassidus Applied. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at chassidusapply.com/donate.